Hello, I'm Janie Buckland with the West Virginia Few, Families United for Education, and I got a parking ticket at the hearing. But I'm going to refute it because I was back within the window of time. I'm here at just outside of the Circuit Court in Charleston, West Virginia. We had our preliminary hearing, just had that hearing on Hope Scholarship with Judge Tabit, and did not expect an answer today. However, she did go ahead and rule and did grant a preliminary and permanent injunction on the Hope Scholarship. And so a lot of questions about what that means now. And so I just wanted to come on and give you a breakdown on that and talk a little bit about what we should expect now, a little bit about what happened in the courtroom, and then just some thoughts on what you can expect as we move forward. So as far as in the courtroom today, it was a little hard to sit through in that the plaintiff made several statements which actually misrepresented the program. And so that, for my personality, is very hard to sit through and to hear. And some ways that it was misrepresented was that they argued that there is no accountability in place on the side of the parents and on the side of the providers. They argued that a parent would be able just to take this money and use it willy-nilly. They argued that it was just an incentive to privatize education. And so they argued that it was like, what does it actually do? I feel like Judge Tabit really wanted that response. She wanted that answer, like, why would we be for this? Who is for this? And why would we be for this? And the opposition was just simply saying that it is a way to pull public money from the public school system. So that was a little hard to sit through. As far as assessments go, there was misrepresentation in that the attorney actually said, who knows how they get their certificate, talking about certified teachers reviewing the portfolio review. These are the same certified teachers that are in our classrooms. If someone has earned their teaching certificate, if they have earned their degree and earned their teaching certificate, these are the same individuals that we entrust in a classroom setting. And the attorney said, who knows that you won't just pay them $100 and they'll certify your child has met the criteria. So that was a little interesting because you're making an argument against the integrity of a certified teacher, and it's the same requirements for those who sit in classrooms who instruct our children in the public school system. So, and then it was stated that there are no provisions for assessments. So they brought up educational neglect. You know, that's a real concern in the state of West Virginia. It's a real concern, educational neglect. And so that issue was raised, and it was just unfortunate that the program was misrepresented by the plaintiff's attorney in stating that the standardized test or there's no accountability. The assessments actually are submitted to the county level and then are submitted to the State Department of Education. When I came here this morning, or even I could go back 3 years to when I first was introduced to the arguments for charter schools in the state of West Virginia. I wanted to hear the best arguments for and against. The best arguments for Hope Scholarship and the best argument against Hope Scholarship. And that's kind of what I wanted to hear today. And we did not hear the best arguments against it. It was misrepresented. So it's just frustrating because I think that their opposition, they could have argued factually, and I would have been able to say, okay, well, here we go. Let's do this. Let's duke it out. But that didn't happen. And that's not to dismiss concerns about the effects of Hope Scholarship. I think that is, for many of us, we do believe that we need strong public school systems. And so, my friend Ryan Quinn at the Gazette asked me, many could argue, I brought up that we have a teacher shortage of 600 teachers in the state of West Virginia. And so you can't even guarantee that the state is putting a certified teacher into a classroom to instruct and assess students. And so when they bring up that argument that there's no guarantee or there's no quality control for Hope Scholarship, we don't even have that in the public school system. That's the reality of it. But we do want strong public schools. And so Ryan said, it could be argued that we can't even fund to have 600 teachers. And so now we're kind of furthering that defunding. But my response is it a lack of funds or is it a mismanagement of funds? We have 55 counties. We have, the local county boards, as far as board personnel, all of that staffing and administrative. So it's just, I feel like there are conversations when it comes to the funding that are more nuanced, and you can't really just say, well, it's a lack of money and that's why we have 600 teacher shortage. Is it possible that we have a mismanagement of funding? And again, is the public school system providing what a child needs? And if it's not, does the state have an obligation to all students in West Virginia, or does it only have an obligation to the students enrolled in the system? I think that's the question that's being argued. And I would argue that the state of West Virginia has an obligation to provide opportunity for education for every child, and that Hope Scholarship is a way to do that. And that when a child is not enrolled in the public school system, then we have taken the responsibility and the expense of educating that child from the public school system. And there are measures in place for assessment, for quality control, for regulation of the funding. Those measures are in place. And that we have left behind the federal funds, we've left behind the local funds. And so we're taking the expense and the responsibility and leaving that local and federal funding in place. So it was, I think what Institute for Justice, Josh House, I think what he was trying to do, and that's who was arguing on our behalf, on behalf of the families who have filed a motion to intervene. I think what Josh was doing was arguing the matter at hand, and that was that, is this causing emergency harm in a way that we need to grant this injunction right here, right now, and bring everything to a halt? And he was arguing that they had not satisfied showing that it's unconstitutional and that an emergency or an injunction was not warranted. I don't think that Josh would have been able to refute all of the misrepresentation that was brought on by the opposition. The opposition got way more time than the defense, that's for sure. And so she ruled, and she gave the injunction. She granted that, And so now what happens is we wait for the order. And once we have the order, it looks like, it appears to me, I'm not an attorney, I'm not giving anybody advice, but it appears to me that what we do now is wait for that order, and then we will hear from Institute for Justice on an appeal. And I'm not sure if that appeal goes to this new intermediate level court or if that goes on to the state. Either way, our hope would be that they would issue a stay, which means that we would pick up where we left off and move forward until the lawsuit is heard and considered and ruled upon. That's what we would hope for, right? But there's a possibility that we have this injunction in place and that we don't get a stay. And if that happens, then yes, everything is, stopped until there is a ruling on the lawsuit, on the arguments of the lawsuit. If anybody has specific questions about those arguments, again, that's just what I had expected, but I've been told that I have a more altruistic view on some of this stuff, I suppose, in that I just think that we get down to the best arguments, and that's where we move the needle, and that's where we should sit. That didn't happen today. So what felt like a victory and there were familiar faces. Miller Hall was my principal at Woodrow's. There were familiar faces in the courtroom, some from local boards who I'm familiar with. And so it felt, I'm sure, like a victory for them. But I'm just sad that 3,000 students whose parents have spent time and effort and energy in making decisions for them and doing everything they needed to do to jump through the hoops to satisfy the criteria, and then that's being taken away from them, and now we're left to figure out an alternative, right? And so I'll say this: for parents looking for the 22-23 academic year, in light of this, what are your options? If you need custodial care, the reality is if you can't afford private school and you need custodial care, then, sorry, I got to fix that. It was driving me bonkers. Then you will be looking to enroll in public school or in the public charter if you are in the Eastern Panhandle or up there by the Trues in Morgantown. That right now would be your in-person option if you need custodial care. If you were going to educate at home, and this is a point I wanted so badly to make, I wanted to disrupt the court and jump up. Homeschooling is expensive. There are many families who would homeschool if they could afford to outsource the instruction. And this is why I'm in the game. I've homeschooled my children for 15 years, and we've been blessed to be able to afford tutoring and music and ways to supplement their education. But the reality is not everybody can do that. And there are many families who don't need the custodial care, who could have their children exempt from compulsory attendance and not have them enrolled in public school, but they just need some financial assistance to be able to outsource for a quality education, have someone else teach math, have them take an online science class, have them attend an in-person tutorial like what we have in Raleigh County. And so they needed these monies to be able to afford that as an alternative to the public school system that is not meeting their child's needs. And so when you say, Judge Tabit kept saying, you can homeschool, you can put your kids in private school. Well, that's easy to say. The average West Virginia family cannot. And many would say this doesn't solve the least of these issues. The students who do not have parent advocates, the students in foster care, the students whose families are in poverty, who are not advocating for their children. And I would recognize that. I would say, you're right, this isn't a perfect solution for all of that. However, is it a partial solution in that some families, middle to lower class families, would be able to use Hope Scholarship to better their child's education in a way that moves the needle and makes the difference. And so if public school is not checking the boxes and meeting the needs of that student, $4,300 to outsource makes a difference when a child is being bullied in a classroom. $4,300 makes a difference when a child has dyslexia and is not having proper accommodations in the classroom. $4,300 makes a difference when a parent both parents are working full time and you need to outsource that instruction for a child that has health issues, that can't attend school full time in person. And we have all heard for years now concerns about the quality of the virtual program that we have in West Virginia through the county virtual. And so I just think that when we look at this and we say, oh, you can choose to private school, you can choose to homeschool. Yeah, we're not talking about that. We're talking about being able to afford it. And does the state have an obligation to children who are not enrolled in the public school system? I mean, I think that that's a valid argument. I think that's a valid question. I would say, are we in a state which wants to limit opportunity or provide opportunity? All right, so I'm rambling. Next steps, if you're looking for alternatives for the fall, charter school, charter virtual. If you do not need custodial care, you could consider the virtual charter schools. There are two. We'll drop links in the comments. So there are alternatives. If you are choosing to just go ahead and homeschool, you're going to file an Exemption C, which will take precedent over your Hope Scholarship. Again, I wouldn't do any of this until we actually know what's going to happen. I would suggest waiting until we know what happens and hopefully hear something back on this order and from the Supreme Court. And then at that time, the West Virginia Few will be here to assist you and answer questions and to make sure that you feel confident in what your options are in light of this ruling. And that's who we're loyal to. The West Virginia Few, our board, Melinda, Christine, Tia, Jessica, my assistant, me, Jamie Buckland, the founder, we are here to serve families. That's who our client, if you will, are the families of West Virginia. We're here to represent the families and to work as a liaison for the families. And so that's who we're loyal to. We're not loyal to any organization outside of that. We're loyal to the families of West Virginia. And so we're still going to be here helping you navigate those options. So I had a couple of questions. Can you be brought up to speak on behalf of what the program really is? I don't know. I don't know that I can do. I don't know what I can or can't do. I know that sitting there is like, I want to go to law school so bad. I'm still trying to convince my son, Ethan, who I graduated a few years ago. They're driving me crazy. I'm sweating in the car. I've tried to convince him to come back to West Virginia and go to school and he is excellent. He's quick and he would make such a fantastic attorney. So we'll see if I can't get him back and he could go to school and in 8 years he could be the pro bono, do some pro bono work for the West Virginia Few and be our attorney. If we still choose to homeschool this year and manage to pay out of pocket, will the scholarship money be available to us 23-24, or will we not be eligible for funds because we aren't in public schools? That's a great question, and it's one that I don't have the answer to. Earlier on, it was said that the treasurer said no matter what happened, if you had earned eligibility once, it would pick back up. The argument could be made that as of today, when the law was enjoined, your student was eligible and awarded the scholarship. And so whenever it opens back up, then that should be in effect. It's definitely a question we're aware of. And as I get an answer on that, I think we'll have to wait and see what the terms of this order, the terms of the injunction are, and get some feedback from Institute for Justice and others on what it looks like moving forward. Okay, so that looks like those are the questions that I can see here from Facebook. That's what's going on. Just know that the few, my work didn't start with Hope Scholarship. My work isn't going to end with Hope Scholarship. We are still here to support families who want to be enrolled in public school, whose needs are being met in the public school system, or for whatever reason that is the best choice that their family is making. We're here for those families. We want to invest in families who are investing in their public schools, whether it is through supporting you and being a part of your local school improvement council, better understanding how to request an audience with your board, how to make sure that you are working alongside the teachers and the personnel at your school system. I'm not against public schools, contrary to what they want us to believe. I do not believe in the us versus them arguments. If you are a private school and private school parent and you were planning to enroll your child, I will say this, they did talk about being able to enroll your child. You'll remember back when I got started in the game with Hope Scholarship in late last year, I was actively advising parents to not place their children into public school last year because it would make the opposition's argument when it came time, and I was right. So today they brought up the fact that if you went into school last semester in order to earn eligibility, if you're a private school homeschool, you went into school to earn eligibility, that school never received any funding. It caused an unnecessary disruption, and yet it qualified you for Hope Scholarship. I feel like that is a strong argument against doing that, and it it was brought up today that parents would be able to do that and the school would never get that funding. So if you were a parent that was looking at placing your child into school this fall and you're saying, well, is it even going to exist? We don't know. If you're homeschooling, you know, we have been working with providers who serve homeschoolers. They're not only in this game because of Hope Scholarship. There are, I think we're over 30 few features right now of providers who serve families with or without Hope Scholarship. And so if you are in a position that you can still afford that, we're happy to help make those connections and make sure it works. If you need to talk about assessments as a homeschooler, if you need to set up a consultation, just reach out. We'll drop our forms in the comments to make sure that you know how to connect with us. Lastly, I will say that if you are a homeschooler and you're looking for SSAC eligibility, we're still navigating and managing that as well, because we care about our student athletes and want to make sure that your options are considered. So thank you all for following along and for being invested in your children's education. I think that it is time that West Virginia considers the families and the parents who are invested in their child's education instead of only focusing on what has plagued our state in the parents who do not focus on the health and well-being of their child. I realize in our state that we are plagued by that. I realize that. I'm not dismissing that. But if our state continues to only focus on the children who are being left behind, we are doing a disservice to the families who are saying, look, with a little bit of assistance, we could have an alternative that works for our kids. And how long should those kids wait while we try to fix the public school system? How long should they be subject to the bullies or to the lack of accommodations for exceptionalities? How long should these kids go without that education? We're coming off of the end of a pandemic. There is a 2-year learning gap. There are ways that we could be addressing those gaps for children that we can't expect our public school system to be the only answer for. And what West Virginia will do if they do not allow Hope Scholarship to serve families, what they'll be doing is saying it continues to be hard in the state of West Virginia. We are continuing to limit opportunities and make it hard for a working class family to provide for their children in a way that meets their child's needs. It's either, I love this analogy, it is either public housing, which if public housing works for you, it works for you, or it is go build your own house. Because if you can't afford to homeschool or private school, this is your option. This is what you have in the public school system. And I just think that if we look around at research, if we look across the nation at other states who have school choice, I think that we're doing our state and our children a disservice to not recognize the deficit that we're at when it comes to education, and to think that we must continue to limit opportunity and that's somehow going to get us a different result is erroneous. It's just not. Um, it is not serving our families in West Virginia well to think that we can continue to limit these opportunities and restrict to public, private, home. Yes, we have two brick and mortar charter. Yes, we have two. We have two virtual charter because we're only allowed to have two virtual charter options. We're in a state in West Virginia where the alternatives, 11 out of our 55 counties, do not even have a private school. So if the public school system is not working for your child, does West Virginia care about you? How hard should it be for a working family in West Virginia to figure out an alternative that meets their child's needs? And that's what I think the Hope Scholarship does. I think it looks at families. It's not a perfect solution, but it is a partial solution, and it looks to families who could benefit from it, and it says your child is valuable, and we believe in funding the education of children, not in just funding systems, and we're going to afford this for your child because we know that it will make a difference. And we trust our parents to be invested in their child's education, and we trust that parents are the best suited to make educational decisions for their children. And we'll have provisions in Hope Scholarship to ensure that there is not a misuse of funds, that there aren't fraudulent uses by providers. We're going to have audits. We're going to make sure those measures are in place. Okay, I went on a tangent, sorry. But we've been here. I've been helping families for a lot longer than the passage of Hope Scholarship. So we'll continue to do this work, and do reach out. Let us know how we can help. Next steps is to wait for that order, then to wait for an appeal. Yeah, we're in the beginning of July, and that disbursement was supposed to hit August 15th. Unfortunately, these aren't satisfying answers, but let us know how we can help. Have a great day.